Hello and welcome to Tech with Jaspal. I'm thrilled to have you back on my channel. Today we are diving deep into Azure Fundamentals exam. I've got 30 crucial questions from our question bank lined up for you. So if you are preparing to ace the exam, you are in the right place. Let's get started.
When you are implementing software as a service solution, you are responsible for which of the following? Your options are installing the SaaS solution, configuring high availability, configuring the SaaS solution, defining scalability rules. So the correct answer is option C, configuring the SaaS solution. With SaaS, cloud providers host and manage the software application and underlying infrastructure and handle any maintenance like software upgrades and security patching. You just need to configure the SaaS application before starting to consume it. If Microsoft plans to end support for an Azure service that does not have a successor service, Microsoft will provide notification at least 12 months before. Now, the instructions are that you need to review the underlying text here. If it makes the statement correct, then you need to select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. So your options are no changes needed, 6 months, 30 days, or 3 months. So the correct answer is option A, no changes needed. Microsoft provides at least 12 months notice if support of an Azure service is ending and it doesn't have any successor. An Azure administrator plans to run a PowerShell script that creates Azure resources. You need to recommend which computer configuration to use to run the script. Which three computers can run the script? So you need to choose the three options here. Your options are a computer that runs Windows 10 and has Azure PowerShell module installed, a computer that runs Mac OS and has PowerShell Core 6.0 installed, a computer that runs Linux and has Azure PowerShell module installed, a computer that runs Chrome OS and uses Azure Cloud Shell, a computer that runs Linux and has Azure CLI tools installed. So the right answers are option A, C, and D. Options A and C are straightforward as they are combination of PowerShell installation on a supported OS. Option D talks about using Cloud Shell on Chrome OS. Cloud Shell can be accessed from any browser, which provides you option to use both Bash and PowerShell, hence making it the right option. SLA in Azure is a formal agreement between Microsoft and customer. Which factor is covered in SLA? Your options are availability, scalability, elasticity, and durability. So the right answer is option A, availability. The service level agreement describes Microsoft's commitment for uptime and connectivity for Microsoft online services. Based on this statement, availability is the factor which is covered in SLA. For each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true, otherwise select no. So the first statement is Azure provides flexibility between CAPEX and OPEX. Let's first understand what is CAPEX and OPEX. CAPEX or capital expenditure in layman terms is company's long-term expense or upfront cost. Some of the examples of CAPEX are physical data center, storage, or network costs, whereas operational expenditure, which is also called as OPEX, there is no upfront cost, but you pay for the service as you use it, which is why the first statement is correct, as all the cloud providers enable you to move from CAPEX to OPEX model. Moving on to the next statement in the list. If you create two Azure virtual machines that use E2S underscore V3 size, each VM will generate same monthly cost. Both the virtual machines can have different monthly cost even after having same size, as they could have different disk or networking configuration attached to them. So the second statement is false. Next statement. When a virtual machine is stopped, you continue to pay storage costs associated to the virtual machine. While the VM is shut down, there is still a storage cost for the disk that is holding the virtual hard drive file, as well as any other data storage disks you may have created, as you are still consuming the file storage. If you delete them before shutting down the VM, then you won't be billed for storage. So this statement is correct. Your company has an Azure subscription that contains the following unused resources: 20 user accounts in Azure Active Directory, 10 public IP addresses, 5 groups in Azure AD, 10 network interfaces. You need to reduce the Azure cost for the company. Now, the solution you gave is you remove the unused public IP address. Does the solution meet the goal? You need to choose between yes or no. So the correct answer is yes. You get charged for public IP addresses on an hourly basis. So removing unused public IP addresses will definitely save some money. You can deploy physical servers in which of the following cloud models? Your options are private cloud only, private cloud and hybrid cloud only, hybrid cloud only, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and public cloud. So the right answer is option B, private cloud and hybrid cloud only. What is one point of entry that combines access to multiple resources behind it in federated identity management? Your options are single sign-on, single registration, proxy sign-on, flow control. Let's first understand what is federation. Federation is a collection of domains that have established trust. Now, the level of trust may vary, but typically includes authentication and almost always includes authorization. Day-to-day example of this scenario can be your company's intranet portal, where you don't need to sign in as it automatically authenticates you using the credential you used to log into onto your machine, which is called as single sign-on. So the correct answer is option A, single sign-on. In the world of Azure, you can use Azure AD to set up federated identity with multiple supported applications. One such example is within GitHub, where you log in into GitHub using the Azure AD credentials. Select the answer that correctly completes the sentence. You can use Azure File Sync Agent to sync on-premise data to an Azure. Your options are queue, file share, blob container, data lake, storage container. So the right answer is option B, file share. Now, the Azure File Sync agent enables data on a Windows server to be synchronized with an Azure file share. Now, you can refer to the link on my screen to understand Azure file share more detailed. Which resource can be used as a source for a network security group inbound security rule? Your options are service tags only, IP addresses only, application security groups only, and the last one, IP address security tags and application security groups. So the correct answer is option D. Any IP address, CIDR block, service tag, or application security group can be used as a source for network security group inbound security rule. Now, if you have heard what I just said, there can be a variation to this question where they can include CIDR block in the options as well. Select the statement which is true about Azure China. Your options are Azure China is operated by Microsoft. Workloads deployed in Azure China can be accessed from China only. Azure China is a physically separated instance of cloud services located in China. Azure China doesn't have a feature parity gap with Azure Global. Now, read the statements carefully, and you need to make sure you are choosing the statement which is true about Azure China. So, the right answer is option C. Azure China is a physically separated instance of cloud services located in China. Regarding the other options, it is opposite. That is, Azure China is operated by a partner named 21 Vianet. The workloads that are deployed in Azure China can be accessed globally, and Azure China does have a feature parity gap. However, the gap is narrowing now. I've already created a detailed video around regions in Azure, as there can be few questions around this topic in exam. So check out the video to understand this in more detail. Question number 97 of the series. Your company plans to deploy several web servers and several database servers to Azure. You need to recommend an Azure solution to limit the type of connections from the web servers to the database servers. What should you include in the recommendation? Your options are a local network gateway, an Azure service bus, network security groups, a route filter. So the requirement is to limit the type of connections from web layer to database layer. In a traditional on-premise environment, you would use something like a firewall to establish the connectivity, to limit the connectivity. And, and in the case of Azure, that thing can be implemented by the use of network security groups. You can use an Azure network security group to filter network traffic between Azure resources in an Azure virtual network. A network security group contains security rules that allow or deny inbound network traffic to or outbound network traffic from several type of Azure resources, which is something a firewall does for us in a traditional on-premise environment. So the correct answer in this case is option C, network security group. You plan to map a network drive from several computers that run Windows 10 to Azure storage. You need to create a storage solution in Azure for the planned map drive. What should you create? Your options are a virtual machine data disk, a file service in a storage account, a blob service in a storage account, an Azure SQL database. So the correct answer is option B, a file service in a storage account. Azure Files is Microsoft's easy-to-use cloud file system. Azure File shares can be seamlessly used in Windows and Windows servers. To use an Azure file share with Windows, you must either mount it with, which means assigning it a drive letter or mount point path, or you can access it via its UNC path. Which service provides network traffic filtering across multiple Azure subscriptions and virtual networks? Your options are an application security group, a network security group, Azure Key Vault, Azure Firewall. The correct answer in this case is option D, Azure Firewall. This is one of the questions where other option, which is network security group, might sound correct to many of you. But remember, network security groups provide distributed network layer traffic filtering to limit traffic to resources within virtual networks in each subscription. Whereas Azure Firewall is a fully stateful centralized network firewall as a service which provides network and application level protection across different subscriptions and virtual networks, which is what is being asked in this question, hence making Azure Firewall as the correct answer. Azure DevOps services allow developers to deploy or update applications to Azure using continuous integration and continuous delivery pipelines. Yes, this statement is correct. Azure Pipelines, which is a part of Azure DevOps service, lets you continuously build, test, and deploy to any platform and cloud. You can build, test, and deploy Node.js, Python, Java, PHP, .NET, Android, or even iOS apps and run them in parallel on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows operating system. Now you have a statement. Azure Key Vault is used to store app secrets, and the instructions are review the underlying text. If it makes the statement correct, select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, select the answer choice that makes the statement correct. Your options are no changes needed, Azure Security Center, Azure Repos, Azure Blob Storage. Yes, the statement is correct. So option A, no changes needed, is the right answer. Azure Key Vault is a cloud service for securely storing and accessing secrets. A secret is anything that you want to tightly control access to, such as API keys, passwords, certificates, or even cryptographic keys. Key Vault service supports two types of containers, vaults and managed hardware security module HSM pools.
Question number 186 of the series. Your company hosts an accounting application named App1 that is used by all the customers of the company. App1 has low usage during the first 2 weeks and very high usage during the last 2 weeks of each month. Which benefit of Azure Cloud supports cost management for this type of usage pattern? Your options are high latency, elasticity, high availability, load balancing. And the correct answer here is elasticity. Elasticity in cloud computing allows you to automatically scale your resources up or down based on demand. This elasticity feature helps in cost management because you only pay for the resources you actually use. When the usage is low, you are not paying for access capacity, and when it's high, you are scaling up effectively and efficiently to meet the demand without incurring unnecessary costs. You are planning to deploy numerous web and database servers to Azure. You need to create a strategy that allows for connection types between the web and database servers to be controlled. You include use of network security groups in your strategy. Does the solution meet the goal? Yes, it meets the goal. NSGs allow you to define inbound and outbound rules to filter network traffic to and from Azure resources. This can help you enhance security and control access between your servers. However, the effectiveness of your strategy also depends on how you configure the NSGs and other security measures you put in place. The company is planning on setting up a solution in Microsoft Azure. The solution would have the following key requirement, and the requirement is provides a platform for creating workflows. Which of the following would be best suited for this requirement? Your options are Azure App Service, Azure Application Insights, Azure Logic Apps, Azure Databricks. For providing a platform for creating workflows, Azure Logic Apps is the best choice. Azure Logic Apps is a cloud service that allows you to create and run workflows that can integrate with various Azure services and external services. It's designed specifically for building workflows, automating tasks, and orchestrating processes. You can use it to create and manage complex workflows easily without the need of extensive coding. This question requires that you evaluate the underlined text to determine if it is correct. Your company implements Azure Sentinel, which is what is underlined here, to automatically add a watermark to Microsoft Word documents that contain credit card information. Now, the instructions are you need to read the underlined text. If it makes the statement correct, you need to select no changes needed. If the statement is incorrect, you need to select the choice that makes the statement correct. Your options are Azure Information Protection, DDoS Protection, Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, and then the obvious one, if there is no change needed, then you select no changes needed. To implement this functionality, you would need to use Azure Information Protection. Which of the following Azure services don't require you to select a particular region? Your options are Virtual Machine, Azure Active Directory, Storage Account, Azure DNS, Azure traffic manager. So the question is talking about, probably in other words, you need to tell which of the services, Azure services, are global in nature. That means when you create those services, you don't basically need to specify any region. And the services that are global in nature are Azure Active Directory, Azure DNS, and Azure Traffic Manager. If you have done a bit of work around Azure, then you would know when you create a storage account, you need to specify in which region it is hosted. And same goes for virtual machine. You need to select a region where you are creating virtual machines. That's the reason why those are incorrect options, because they are not global services. Whereas when you create a Azure Active Directory tenant, or you create a DNS service, or you do anything in Traffic Manager, you don't really need to select a region, making them the correct choice here.
You plan to deploy a critical line of business application to Azure. The application will run on an Azure virtual machine. You need to recommend a deployment solution for the application. The solution must provide a guaranteed availability of 99.99%. What is the minimum number of virtual machines and the minimum number of availability zones you should recommend for this deployment? And the first part of the question talks about minimum number of virtual machines. And folks, the minimum number of virtual machines would be 2. And the next part of the question is minimum number of availability zones. And minimum number of availability zones will also be 2. You need a minimum of 2 virtual machines with each one located in a different availability zone to achieve a guaranteed availability of 99.99%. Friends, on your screen is a document which is available on Azure China's website regarding the SLA of virtual machines. And this is what has helped me in answering the question and ensuring that I am choosing right options. For all virtual machines that have 2 or more instances deployed across 2 or more availability zones in the same Azure region, we guarantee you will have virtual machine connectivity to at least one instance at least 99.99% of the time. Let's look at other statements as well, so we know if there is a variation of this question in exam and what we need to choose. For all virtual machines that have 2 or more instances deployed in the same availability set or in the same dedicated host group, we guarantee you will have virtual machine connectivity to at least one instance at least 99.95% of the time. Folks, if you don't know the difference between availability set and availability zones, then there will be more questions in the upcoming series. There will be more questions in this video as well. So stay with me till the end of this video to understand more about them. For any single instance virtual machine using premium SSD or ultra disk for all operating system disks and data disks, we guarantee you will have virtual machine connectivity of at least 99.9%. For any single instance virtual machine using standard SSD managed disks for operating system disk and data disks, we guarantee you will have virtual machine connectivity of at least 99.5%. For any single instance virtual machine using standard HDD managed disk for operating system disks and data disks, we guarantee you will have virtual machine connectivity of at least 95%. So folks, as the SSD changes to HDD, the guaranteed uptime goes down. Similarly, when you move from availability zones to availability sets, the guaranteed uptime comes down from 99.99 to 99.95. There are very small differences in these numbers, so try to remember them, as this is something which can only be found in the documentation. Your organization is moving to the Azure cloud in order to take advantage of consumption-based expense model of cloud computing. Which of the following is an advantage of the consumption-based expense model? You need to choose 2 options. The importance of estimating future resource needs, the ability to pay for more resources when they are needed, the ability to stop paying for resources that are no longer needed, the ability to make one-time upfront expenditures to purchase or secure tangible resources. And friends, the advantage of consumption-based expense model in Azure cloud computing include the ability to pay for more resources when they are needed and the ability to stop paying for resources that are no longer needed. In a consumption-based model, organizations can scale their resources up or down based on demand. This flexibility allows them to relocate or probably allocate additional resources as needed to meet workload demands without over provisioning or incurring unnecessary costs during periods of low activity. And also, organizations have the flexibility to stop paying for resources that are no longer needed. They can decommission or scale down resources when they are no longer needed, thereby optimizing cost and avoiding unnecessary expenses. This is question number 296. And again, in this question, you need to read few statements and you need to select whether this statement is right or wrong. And the first statement is a network security group will block all network traffic by default. This statement is incorrect. We'll look at more detail on why we have chosen these statements as right or wrong in few minutes by going into the Azure portal. Meanwhile, let's look at second statement. Application security groups can be specified as part of network security group rules. This statement is correct, my friends. And the third statement is network security groups always include inbound security rules and outbound security rules. This is also correct. So friends, as I said earlier, we are now in Azure portal and we will try to validate all the three statements which we just went through. In preparation of that, we will first create a network security group. So how we do it, we go into the network security wizard, we click on create new, we select a resource group where our network security group is going to stay. We'll probably name it test NSG and we'll create it in the Southeast Asia region. We are not going to assign it any tags. Let's click review and create. So this is running a validation at the moment and the validation has passed. We will hit create now and the network security group should be created in few minutes. So friends, the deployment has got completed. We now have a network security group created. We'll just click on go to resource and here you can see a network security group has got created successfully. Now comes the part to validate the statements. The first statement was a network security group will block all network traffic by default. However, here you can see with the network security group, you have few inbound and outbound rules created by default where an allow part is there. Like in the inbound security rules, you have two allow rules created by default, which is allow VNet inbound and allow Azure load balancer. And then similarly in the outbound security rules as well, you have two default allow groups created. That is the reason the statement was incorrect. Now before going to the second statement, let's validate the third statement, which was saying network security group always includes inbound and outbound security rules, which you would already know by now. There are some inbound and outbound security rules which have been created by default. So this statement is correct. Now the second statement was application security groups can be specified as part of network security group rules. So to validate that, let's go to inbound security rules and try to create an inbound security rule. Now, when you add an inbound security rule in the source, you get option to select application security group as well. This is the reason we have chosen second statement as correct. Now, friends, while we are in this wizard, you have other options to choose as well in source. So for example, you wanted to allow connectivity from the whole internet. So you would choose service tag here, which gives you option to choose internet, virtual network, Azure load balancer, and those sort of things. So if you are someone who has very limited knowledge of network security groups, then this wizard is something which will tell you about how you use network security groups. If you select my IP address, it will choose your public IP address by default. And then if you choose IP addresses, you get to specify a CIDR range of the IP addresses from which you want to allow or deny connectivity. You get to choose the protocols, you get to choose the destination port ranges, and then you can create the rule by clicking add. Similarly, if we go to the outbound security rules, if you just click on add, again, the options are same. It's just that the earlier you were creating inbound security rule, and now you're going to create an outbound security rule. You have an Azure subscription named subscription 1. You sign into the Azure portal and create a resource group named RG1. From Azure documentation, you have the following command that creates a virtual machine named VM1. In front of you is a command which is AZ-VM create resource group, and the name of resource group is RG1. Then the name of VM is VM1. The image that is being used for this deployment is Ubuntu LTS, and generate SSH keys is defined. You need to create VM1 in subscription 1 using this command. And the solution you present is from a computer that runs Windows 10, install CLI from PowerShell, sign into Azure, and then run the command. Does this solution meet the goal? You need to tell whether it is right or wrong. And this solution is right, my friends. You can use Azure CLI on a Windows 10 machine and then use AZ login command to log in into Azure and create resources. You can use PowerShell or command prompt to do this task. So friends, this means there can be two variations of this solution. Either you can use PowerShell or you can use command prompt. So whichever version you get in your exam, both of the solutions are correct. Friends, this is question number 371 of the series, where we are going to look at series of statements related to total cost of ownership, which is TCO calculator. And the first statement is total cost of ownership calculator displays the cost of running workloads in a data center. This statement is correct, my friends. TCO calculator typically displays the cost of running workloads in a data center. It takes into account various factors such as hardware cost, software licenses, maintenance, energy consumption, cooling, staffing, and other operational expenses to provide a comprehensive view of the total cost associated with running a workload over its lifetime. Then the next statement is TCO calculator displays the cost of running workloads in Azure. This statement is also correct, friends. TCO displays the cost of running workloads in Azure as well. It factors in various Azure services, pricing models, and usage patterns to estimate the total cost associated with deploying and managing workloads on the Azure cloud platform. And the third and final statement is TCO calculator generates graphical reports. This statement is also correct. TCO does generate graphical reports. These reports visually represent cost breakdowns, comparisons, and other relevant data to help users understand the financial implications of deploying workloads on the Azure platform. You have an application that is comprised of an Azure web app that has a SLA of 99.95% and an Azure SQL database that has an SLA of 99.99%. The composite SLA of the application is, and your options are the product of both SLAs, which is equal to 99.94%, the lowest SLA associated to the application, which is 99.95%, the highest SLA that is associated to the application, which is 99.99%, the difference between the two SLAs, which is 0.05%. And friends, the correct answer here is the product of both SLAs, which equals 99.94%. Composite SLA is usually lower than the individual SLAs because an application that relies on multiple services has more potential failure points. Your company plans to purchase an Azure subscription. The company's support policy states that the Azure environment must provide an option to access support engineers via phone or email. You need to recommend which support plan meets the support policy requirement. And the solution you provide is recommend a professional direct support plan. Does this meet the goal? You need to tell whether this is right or wrong. And friends, this is a correct solution. Even though you can achieve these requirements using a standard plan as well, but the professional direct option, which is more costly, would also fulfill the goal. And this question doesn't have any cost recommendation mentioned. So both professional direct and standard would be correct solutions in this case. So friends, this makes it a variation to this question. So in case the recommended solution is to use a standard plan, then also it would be a correct solution. Your company plans to deploy several custom applications to Azure. The applications will provide invoicing services to the customers of the company. Each application will have several prerequisite applications and services installed. You need to recommend a cloud deployment solution for all the applications. What should you recommend? And now all the three cloud computing service models are listed in front of you, which is software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Now, folks, whenever you have such questions, then you need to think about customization needs. And if the question is talking about lots of customizations, then you will have to go with infrastructure as a service model, because it offers the necessary flexibility, control, and scalability to meet the custom requirements. In the software as a service cloud service model, which responsibility is shared between Microsoft and the customer? Your options are identity and directory infrastructure management, application management, information and data management, operating system updates. And folks, the correct answer here is option A, identity and directory infrastructure management. All the other three options are either completely customer's responsibility or Microsoft's responsibility in SaaS model. So friends, let's go through this official documentation to understand more about shared responsibility and who owns what in different type of cloud computing models, as you can get multiple questions which are revolving around shared responsibility model in Azure Fundamentals exam. In an on-premise data center, you own the whole stack. As you move to the cloud, some responsibility is transferred to Microsoft. The following diagram illustrates the area of responsibility between you and Microsoft according to the type of deployment of your stack. Now, some of the options which are mentioned in this diagram were part of your question, so we will go through them as well and the other options as well. Now, in the left-hand side, you can see there are multiple responsibilities mentioned. And then on right-hand side, you have different cloud computing models and on-premise as well. Now, the dark blue color is the customer's responsibility, light blue color is the Microsoft's responsibility, and a combination of both these colors is the shared responsibility. So you can see in the on-premise, obviously, because you are hosting everything in your data center, so you are responsible for managing everything. That is why for on-premise, everything is dark blue. Now coming back to the other types of responsibility. So physical data center, let's start from bottom. Physical data center is always the responsibility of Microsoft, whether you are in any of the cloud computing models. Similarly, physical network and physical hosts are also Microsoft's responsibility. So what this tells us is, if you are talking about anything which is physical in cloud computing, is the responsibility of Microsoft. Keep that in mind while answering such questions. Now, operating system varies based on the cloud computing model that you are using. If you are using infrastructure as a service, then operating system responsibility lies with you. But if you are using platform as a service or software as a service, then that responsibility shifts to Microsoft. Similarly, then when you are talking about network controls in SaaS, it's complete Microsoft's responsibility. And in IaaS, it is complete your responsibility. But in PaaS, it is shared between Microsoft and customer. Now, one such example would be network controls of the physical infrastructure that are being talked about here. And then suppose you are using a platform as a service application, which is Azure SQL database. So you will be responsible for setting up the network controls on how your application is accessible to the outside world. Similarly, for identity and directory infrastructure, whether you are in PaaS or you are in SaaS, it is a shared responsibility. Now the top three ones, and you can see information and data, which was crux of one of our question, which was question number 417. I did mention whether you are in whichever cloud computing model, it is always customer's responsibility, and you can see it is all customer responsibility. Similarly, account and identities are always customer's responsibility because you are responsible for setting up access to your application. Similarly, devices are always your customer responsibility. So friends, if you understand this whole diagram, then you can answer a lot of variations of this shared responsibility model, which you can encounter in your exam. Friends, that's all for this video. But if you would like to get access to the PDF of full set of questions, then join the channel as a gold member and email me at devopshub2023@gmail.com requesting the PDF copy. If you have liked the content, then do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel.